Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 98. We don't need another hero.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back to the World Builder's Anvil, a podcast where I, Jeffrey W. Ingram, and
Michael Miller
talk about topics from the perspective of a fantasy or science fiction world builder.
You gonna limit it just to fantasy or science fiction? What if you just wanted to
Absolutely.
do like dramatic writing?
If people do paranormal, they can't use this stuff.
Okay.
No one.
So if I just want to make like a drama about a family, I gotta have a like space guns and
there has to be a new podcast.
Okay. Well, there is. There's probably a couple.
There's probably 10,000.
There's probably no. I'm talking about like we'll probably have a couple more. I mean, I know.
Oh yes,
I've been slowly working on my secret project.
Well, yes, but I was talking about specifically about the topics we're talking about. Our podcast.
I would like to launch mine before the end of this year. We're getting into the holidays, but that's my goal.
It's gonna be tough during the holidays. But
I know.
Okay.
But that's my goal. Before the beginning of 2016, I'd like to have the second show started.
Our producer signals that she doesn't care. Okay.
No. Well, she was just looking.
This is our secondary producer, our executive producer, Roz, with us in this.
Yeah, this is our associate producer. She was licking her tushy on the table just a moment ago. So she's. And
if the sound goes really bad, it's because she's owning the microphone as we're talking, and she's now glaring at me because I don't give her cheese. Okay. So today, what we want to do is we want to talk a bit about what it is to be a hero before we get into that. And just briefly, because there are 5 main topics we want to talk about. Motivation, purpose, which to both of us are the reasons someone's a hero.
Yeah, because you can have a fictional character, and like everyone that's in your story or game, whatever you're developing or working on, you've got characters. But heroes stick out. And for me, and people can disagree with me, that's fine. The difference between your everyday character and your hero is your hero has a purpose and a motivation.
And a perspective from the book, because the book's telling it from a certain point of view, which aligns up their values with the hero, where you could take the same exact story, twist the perspective. Let's say you have an orc versus a human in my world. If you take the story from the perspective of the orcs, the villain from the human book is now the hero trying to fight the villain human.
Yes, I was actually going to say something like that. Like if your main character and the person whose perspective you are engaging with the material, is that always going to be your hero because that's the perspective you're getting it from? Yeah. Like even if they're doing awful, vile things.
No, I mean you could
follow a book by the villain's perspective.
You have certain attributes that a culture will value, and certain ones they will have a distaste in. If someone from that culture is on the distasteful, evil side of what that culture believes, they'd be the villain. But I'm saying in a normal story where the lead character is actually the hero, and so the person could be a villain within the culture as well, and be from that culture and that race. Okay.
So, motivation.
Okay, so I don't want to pick the motivation for our hero yet.
No. Did you want to talk about motivation for a second?
Yeah.
Or do you just want to, we'll save that, we'll get back to that when we talk about it?
We'll get back to that after we get to the next part, which is the type of hero.
Okay. Did you cover all these? Because we said motivation and purpose, but did you mention?
I didn't mention the other ones yet, and the reason I didn't is because the other ones are generic things that will show up for any character.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And you could get very specific into that, like equipment and, do you have a 10 or 11 foot pole? That kind of stuff.
I like how you're like, oh, those are the 3 things that any character would have, which is exactly what I said before the show started.
Yes, which is true.
I want to make sure that I get
credit. I put them there because
I want to make sure you didn't put them there. I put them there. I want to make sure that.
Yeah, but I said them and you wrote them down.
No, that's not true. You're making that up. They were all my ideas, just like those were all my ideas.
Yes, this is all Mike's ideas.
Look, you're just lucky I allow you to be the host of the show. All right, so the types of hero, and you wrote this. These are Jeff's ideas. I'm not stealing credit. This is Jeff, but I don't know that I'm not going to disagree with the list, I am going to say that we didn't have a chance to talk about this beforehand.
Yeah.
So if this list
there could be other things.
Yeah, I think this list is probably incomplete.
Yes.
But since
Most
we
definitely.
just got into the recording,
And see,
that's
I'm
fine.
involved in a rollout at work, and I really haven't had a lot of time to plan.
Yeah.
It's most definitely incomplete.
Okay. So let's accept that it's incomplete and just go with it. So these
And a
are
great thing,
types of heroes.
and a great thing would be to give us comments of what are more types of heroes that we're missing, or just send us a Wicca leak.
Sure. And we'd be happy to explore that in the future.
Yep. Okay. So the first one I have is an archetype, and
Archetype? What is archetype as opposed to archetype?
well, it's really an archetype, but
Okay.
I cut the A out because I want it to mean something different.
Okay. Do you want to explain that or?
So type of hero. And in there's this incomplete list that we have here, as we've admitted before. And essentially, these are just certain types, and it'll give you focus on when you're building the hero of, there's certain kinds of traits you're going to need.
Yeah. We'll call them a recipe, a base, a foundation for what you're going to create.
They won't complete the character, but it'll give you a thing to fall back on and go, wait, this doesn't make sense for this kind of hero.
And a starting point.
Yeah. So what I call an archetype is, some people might use archetype, but I don't like that word because there's too many letters.
Yeah, Jeff removed the A, so I thought he spelt it wrong, but he purposefully wrote archetype.
Yes, that's the story I'm going to go with from now into forever.
Did you just make that up? Did you actually forget the A and now you're making something up? No, you really did.
No. Okay. Crazy.
Because you are a fiction writer.
And I do lie.
And you do lie.
Okay. But essentially, the idea is that's your over-the-top hero. That's, to me, a Clark Kent Superman.
I was just going to say that, Superman.
Just everything they do is disgustingly good. There's nothing bad about them.
Your Captain America's, your Superman's, your Boy Scout hero.
Your Boy Scout hero, which maybe that's going to be the new name for that.
Boy Scout hero?
Scratch that. We're going to call it Boy Scout hero. A Greek hero. This is one of my favorite kinds. And the way I define a Greek hero, which could be different from anyone with an actual education, is this idea of a tragic hero.
I love tragic heroes.
And essentially, they have a great strength and a great weakness, and they're related. For example, Ulysses.
I was going to say Ulysses, Odysseus.
He had great human strength, and he was very strong-willed and stubborn, which made him do things to upset the gods, which caused all of his problems, which would have made the Iliad much more boring if he did not.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And all the men got killed, and
I'm sorry, the Odyssey. He was in the Iliad, but it was the Odyssey is the one I'm thinking of. So
can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah,
your tragic hero is one of my favorite hero types, and not necessarily that everything bad has to happen to him and everything, but I love and I'm gonna get back into this when we start building ours because I want this in ours. Is that and I want this in ours is there is an opposing relationship to something that is necessary for the hero and something that is something that is against the hero. So so it's something like say you got a character that's like, okay, Martian Manhunter, terrified of fire, it's his biggest weakness, and let's say 80% because of the base of the story that you're writing, 80% of his opposition puts him in the line of being around fire. Yeah, I wasn't going to say being in the line of fire. It was like being in or around fire. Yeah. That's what I mean, where there is something that is the weakness or is something that is bad about him or bad for him, but there is a necessity of being around it, having it attracted to him or what have you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you get into a tragic thing, it's the actions of the hero will lead to some kind of downfall. Now, I don't believe that needs to be like their death necessarily, but because of their actions and their heroic actions will cause them, like you said, to be in at least great danger. Yeah. So I think that's good. I mean, usually when you think of a tragic hero, though, it's usually very, very bad.
Yeah.
I mean, because heroes in general put themselves in danger or stories are too boring.
Here's another good, and I keep going. I think I'm gonna try to keep pulling from comic books today,
because that's the only literature that either one of us can read.
Yeah, the words are simple. At least they were.
I don't do the
when they
words
wrote
part,
them
just
for
the
ours.
pictures.
Just I like the pictures. Batman
Mhm.
purposefully does not kill. His job would be a lot easier if he did, but that's his commitment, and subsequently, it makes things so hard for him. If he was just a regular guy like me, I don't kill. But it's not hard for me to not kill because my life doesn't put me in that.
But that's not what makes him tragic.
No. It's not. But what I'm not talking about this being a specific character trait of a tragic hero.
Oh, okay.
It does happen to come up a lot with tragic heroes, which is why I'm bringing it up now. And like I said, I'll get back to it when we start with
And
ours.
I think the difference is once you have a tragic hero, it's like I said, it's their actions leading towards something really bad happening.
Yeah. My big thing here is that there is a built-in a contradictory quality to action and purpose.
I mean, my argument being, though, it's not contradictory. It just seems that way on the surface. They can be contradictory, but a lot of times the best ones, it's all interwoven together to where it's really, and really think about it, it's Batman's stubbornness.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That leads to that trait. So it's not necessarily contradictory, but it looks that way from the surface to where, what are you, silly? Just shoot the bad guys. Joker doesn't come back.
I think you're missing my point. My point is that because of that stubbornness, like that stubbornness in me, that's the point I was just making, is that stubbornness in me. Like if I say I refuse to kill, that's not a big deal. I don't put myself in situations where there's a kill or be killed scenario.
Yeah.
Batman does all the time, which is why that contradiction creates creates a tension that that's interesting to read and interesting to experience.
Yeah, I'm missing the contradiction you're pointing out.
That's what I'm pointing out, where there's something that's bad that could occur, or not. I'm using the word bad, but it's not necessarily a bad thing in some cases. Just a something that is a necessary contradiction that constantly comes up because of something that's built into the character or built into the character and his subsequent circumstances. Yeah. So that's all.
And like where I was going to go with the tragic hero scenario would be the Punisher from the first Punisher movie. It was very tragic.
Which one? The movie was tragic if you're referring to the Dolph.
Actually, I was just
referring to the Dolph Lundgren version, then yes. But I like the Thomas Jane Punisher.
Yeah, no, I've seen another one. It must have been 10 years ago. Well, I'm saying 10, so it's probably 12.
Probably right, yeah.
No, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
10 years. Not even. I don't even think. 10 years.
But the point, I was just taking a shot at the Dolph Lundgren movie. But,
okay, fair enough.
Really a bad example of a tragic hero.
But the Punisher is not.
The Punisher himself definitely
The Punisher is definitely a tragic hero. He was just a family man. And
an interesting way they twist it up to where the tragedy starts the heroship, where usually when you think of a tragic hero, it's tragedy
becomes the hero. Because, like he's already a hero, and then tragedy keeps happening.
Tragedy follows. Yeah. Okay, now a dark hero, and you wrote anti-hero.
Which, going back to Batman, is totally true. Because you take a look at it, everybody that he's close to gets hurt, and usually gets hurt bad.
Why don't we ask Jason Todd that?
I was going to say Jason Todd, Barbara,
Miss Gordon.
Ms. Gordon Oracle. I mean, she wasn't Oracle, she was Batgirl until...
She was Batgirl.
And then she had to become Oracle because it's kind of tough to swing from a rooftop in a wheelchair, so...
That's just not... She should just try.
Oh, spoiler alert. I know the story's like 30 years old, but...
Well, at least we didn't say why the Jason Todd thing's bad.
Well, that's old, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so I have dark and you wrote anti, and I don't know if we mean the same thing.
I don't think we mean the same thing. So you talk about dark.
I'll talk about dark, and you'll take up anti, or you'll say it's the same.
Like, let me list these real quick because we have dark hero, we have reluctant hero, and we have anti-hero. Yeah. I want to clarify that a given hero could be a combination of those three things, and that's important to state. There is a distinction between those three things.
They're not the ones above it too. You have a reluctant Boy Scout hero.
Absolutely. But my point is that while there's going to be a lot of overlap in character, those are distinct differences, which is why we've written them down and we're going to discuss them separately. So go ahead. Dark hero.
Okay. So when I say dark hero, what I mean is a hero that is coming at it in a dark perspective. So essentially, they're the kinds of hero where it's a means to an end. The means aren't important. It's the end that's important.
So while we're talking about the Punisher, he's a perfect example.
Yes. I would call the Punisher a dark hero. Yeah, and I think he's a very good example of a dark hero where he has good intentions, but he will use any means necessary to achieve those.
Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine there's a lot of people listening to this show that don't know who the Punisher is, but for a very, very brief explanation, he was a war hero. His family got killed by the mob, and then he made it his personal goal in life to destroy organized crime in New York City. And he does it by all means necessary. He is a savage killer. He is ruthless. He does not fight fair. He is in it just to win. Yes. Like, he does some horrible stuff to people, which is one of the things that I like about him.
And one of the things I like about his character, which didn't come through, especially in the Dolph movie, he's a very patient person.
Yeah, he is.
Until he acts.
Yeah.
He will be impulsive and do crazy things while he's acting, but usually it's because he has 4 or 5 things planned out that you just don't realize as the reader of the story.
Yeah.
And it's maybe not so impulsive in his mind because he knows that if he jumps out of that window, that there's a thing there that he can grab onto.
Yeah. There's, I wish I could remember the name of the storyline. There's a great storyline that if you haven't read it, you probably have, where a local mob boss, Manucci, puts out a hit on him, and she calls in like every hitman in New York. And he actually ends up at the meeting. It's basically like a casting.
Oh, I think I do remember
it's
that.
It's like a casting call. Yeah. So she is talking, or maybe one of her men, I don't really remember, is talking to a room full of assassins. And they're basically, look, whoever brings us the head of the Punisher is going to get the big payday. The Punisher's there. He's in the room. So he's just looking around the room, taking notes on who he's going to kill over the course of the story. And it is so great. It is such a good book. Anyway.
So that's, for me, what a dark hero is. Now, a reluctant hero, and this is definitely one that is almost more of an adjective than a noun here, because it's either the circumstances or something about their personality makes them not want to become a hero.
I'm trying to think of who would be. Oh, you know
Frodo?
what? Braveheart?
Yeah. Yeah.
He fought. He did not want to get involved until his wife got killed.
That's true. That is true.
He was very much like, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved. And then his wife got killed, and then he was all in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All in.
Yeah.
And Frodo is, I think, the classic example. Actually, not Frodo.
Bilbo would be more, yeah.
But even Frodo, though.
Because Frodo volunteered.
He volunteered to leave the Shire, but to do the whole end thing, he was very reluctant to do that.
I'm going to argue with that, because he volunteered at the Fellowship. He said, I can take it, but someone will need to show me the way.
Yeah, but he didn't want to take it. He felt he needed to because all the idiots were arguing and wanted the ring.
Okay. I could give you that.
He believed it needed to be destroyed by that point. He understood it was evil.
I can give you that. So, reluctant hero. Any other things you want to point out about that?
No, I mean,
it's pretty obvious. Yeah. It's like somebody who is capable and is presented with the circumstance where a hero is necessary and thinks maybe someone else can do this.
Another good example, Gandalf. No, I'm lying there.
I was about to say,
Gandalf's all in. He's like, oh, there's trouble. Let's go. Shadowmere.
I need a burglar. You'll do. All right. So, reluctant hero. And
now you're going to say what you think is different about anti-hero. What you mean by that?
Okay, let's go with. I'm gonna use a fun science fiction bit. An anti-hero, difference between a dark hero for me. I'm not going to say this is hard fact, but for me, the difference between a dark hero, i.e., the Punisher, and an anti-hero is the anti-hero can be, and a lot of times is, a bad guy who happens to be doing good things. Now, he might be doing good things only from a self-serving perspective. Okay. But the point is that...
So like Suicide Squad.
And perfect example. Yeah. And I'm not saying that all anti-heroes are bad. That's also not true. But I am going to go with an example of Riddick, as in Pitch Black. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the Chronicles of Riddick and the movie that's called Just Riddick, which is the third installment. So Riddick is the Vin Diesel character that put him on the map before Fast and the Furious. And in Pitch Black, he's a convict being transported to a prison planet. Yeah. He's a murderer. He's not a nice guy. He's very capable.
Yes.
And it's one of these classic examples, like in Aliens or whatever, where you have a mishmash of characters that come from different backgrounds, different people, and they come together because of a common necessity, common goal that they have to achieve. They need each other to survive. Now, Riddick is the most capable in the group, and he subsequently ends up kind of leading them to survival. And by that, I mean only like 2 people, 3 people survive. So it's not like it was a rousing success.
Yeah.
But then in the second movie, I was hoping that they would keep him as an anti-hero. I would say in the second movie, he's a dark hero, because in the second movie, like, they basically turned him in the Kwisatz Haderach, i.e. Dune.
Yeah.
Like, he became something that he wasn't in the first movie. They made up all this jazz that I was not a big fan of. So when you go to the third movie, he's back to being an anti-hero in the third movie.
More deep.
More deep. My name is a killing word. Anyway, so your anti-hero for me, and I'm not saying this is true in all cases, is a hero that they can be. It could be just that they're selfish or self-serving, but they're not a Boy Scout. They're like the opposite of the Boy Scout, and usually they're a bad guy that just happens to be doing good things.
Okay.
So, like, you could argue that Han Solo started out as an anti-hero because he was all about himself. He didn't care about the rebellion. Or you could say he is a anti-hero and reluctant hero.
Who turns into a Boy Scout.
He doesn't turn into a Boy Scout. I would say he turns, of the list we have here, I would say that at the end of Star Wars, he's a reluctant hero.
Okay.
And then maybe Boy Scout. And in the second movie, of course, he's more Boy Scout in the third movie. But
or maybe tragic in the second movie.
Maybe tragic in the second. But in the first movie, in the beginning, like, he's just about the reward. Like, he didn't care about saving the princess until Luke said, oh, there's a reward. And then he's like, oh, really? Now he's interested because it's self-serving.
And a nice thing to keep in mind, too, over the lifespan of a character, if you reuse them a lot, the type of hero they are might change.
And should change, if you ask me. It makes it more interesting.
Well, it depends on the character develops.
Well, of course.
I'm a big believer that I love stories with good character development.
That's obvious.
To me, and I do use characters sometimes that are less changing in their types, but to me, when I do that, it's because I'm trying to create a character that seems more unattainable.
Well, see, for me, I like if you have a character, like, I'm not saying it's the main character, but if you have a character that is a constant, it's like something that you can fall back on to kind of wink at the reader. Like, when you know when this character comes in, you know what to expect because this character is unchanging.
For side characters,
yeah. But you're not going to keep that as your main character. Your main character should evolve.
Like I said, I do have a belief that there is a place, but to me, over the story, that character should become and feel more unattainable to people, almost moving towards an archetype to where, and maybe they even are an archetype. But the thing is, for me, that kind of character you use for a very specific purpose, and they're not the character you ultimately, maybe at the beginning of the story, you want people to identify with them, but by the end, you want them to identify with other characters who've come up in importance in the story. I don't think it would work in a solo story, like if it's like mainly about one character, but in a more ensemble kind of story, I think you could pull off a character like that.
Now that we've covered our very brief and incomplete type of hero list, we're going to talk. You're laughing about that. It's true. I'm just acknowledging it. We'll talk about what makes the hero different than the character, and we'll start building one.
Yeah.
So motivation. I want to point out a couple of things, and I'm going to stick. I thought about this on the drive over, since I mentioned Star Wars. I thought about Luke. Yeah. Luke is your hero of the original trilogy. There's a lot of heroes. I'm just pointing out that he's our main one. We follow him the most. So when you talk about the difference between, like, his buddy Dax is also a character. Aside to the fact that we don't follow Dax around, the difference between Dax and Luke is the motivation and purpose. And then, of course, the fact that we follow him around more. When you just meet Luke, he already has motivation. He doesn't have the purpose yet. He wants the purpose, but he has the motivation. He wants to join the rebellion.
Yeah.
And then you get further into the movie, and then he wants to be a pilot. Like, that's what he really wants to do until Ben discovers him, and then it's like, no, you should be a Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing about it, really, it was he wanted to be a pilot. He wanted to go to the rebellion and be a pilot, and that was his
motivation. Yeah, and then his purpose became save the princess, and more purpose started showing up.
Yeah. Almost definitely. Yeah.
So purpose gets piled onto it, and that in my opinion is the two things that define that's your hero, not just a character. Because Han Solo, while we consider Han Solo a hero,
his purpose was money in the beginning.
Right. Yeah. But my point is that, we're going to call Han Solo a hero. He is a hero of the story.
Yeah, like you said, an anti-hero, dark hero, maybe. Yeah.
But in the context of the entirety of things, I would still call him a side character. I'd say Luke is the hero, and he is a supporting hero.
It depends on
character.
what movie. I think, there are moments, to me, it's an ensemble cast of heroes. But I do agree that I think Luke's slightly more important.
I'm going to say a lot more important because
obviously it's with the whole redemption of Vader and stuff like that.
Right.
Wait,
so,
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. So again, go back to the second word, purpose. What is Han Solo's purpose? We know Luke's, and while we can easily attach a purpose to Han Solo, that's not something that is focused on or followed in the story. We just know that he's a good guy and he's there to help, but
he was getting paid. That's why he got involved.
Well, that's why he first got involved. But after the fact, he became
change over time. Yeah.
Right. So
the character's developed,
but the purpose wasn't developed. You see my point? Do you get what I'm pointing out?
I don't know. I mean, the whole story with Leia. You don't.
No, that's a side plot. That's a side plot, not a purpose.
But part of his purpose is to keep the woman he loves.
That's a motivation.
Okay, well,
that's not a purpose.
Whatever, picky man. Okay,
but do you? No, I'm. This is an exercise in pointing out the distinctions of a story. Like, are you following what I'm saying?
Well, but really, all you're saying then is he doesn't have a purpose that develops, so he's not a hero.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
I would say he is a hero because he does have purpose.
I would say he's a hero because we love him and we want him to be a hero, and he does save the day at the end of the first movie. But he still doesn't have a purpose the way that Luke does.
It might not be as strong of a purpose, but that's why he's a different kind of hero, because his purpose, like I'm involved to do the good things, was money.
I think that right now we're going to have to
move on.
No, I think we just keep going with this conversation and we
talk about what a hero is.
And we do a part 2 where we actually build the hero. Because, I mean, how much time have we spent already?
I think that's a very fair purpose because if we start building a hero at this point,
it's a fair purpose.
It'll be a 7.
Yeah, it'll be like a 2-hour. It'll be like a 2-hour episode. All right. So then maybe we can actually get back to some of this stuff and keep exploring.
But let's go through the 3 things that I like to add on. And this is a somewhat incomplete list as well, too. And so it will actually be fleshed out.
We'll call them basic.
But it's sort of character building things, which is the traits of the person, the personality, and the quirks. Because for me, you need all of those things.
I just realized that
you completely misspelled personality.
What did I spell up there? I don't know where my brain was. Personalite. What did I write?
I think that's it.
So you wrote archetype and I wrote personalite. That's not.
No, I wrote Boy Scout.
Personnel.
I mispronounced it the first time.
Oh, you know what? I wasn't too far off. I wrote an E instead of a Y. I have no idea why I did that, though. That's so wrong. I don't know.
Because you're a socialite.
Well, it's because I was talking to you at the same time while I was trying to write it, and I was getting myself distracted. So
it is exciting talking to him.
So Jeff's were traits, personality, and quirks.
Yeah. And to me, those are the things that sort of flesh out any character.
Yeah.
And, your guard has traits, personalities, and quirks. And then, the U.S. soldier comes by and throws a rock and he's distracted and he gets walked past and he's never seen in the movie again.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that character. Okay, if you want to argue that because he exists, he's got traits, personalities, and quirks. But
they might not be developed in the story.
If we don't ever discover them, I'm saying that they don't exist for that character because they haven't been fleshed out. They haven't been explored. If you're talking about a character and a hero,
you're obviously not an architect world builder.
I'm not. If I need a character like the guard who I throw a rock by, and if the hero who I have built is just trying to distract the guard is a placeholder in that moment.
Sure.
It's not important to me.
As a character, he would possess those things, is what I'm saying.
I'm going to say hypothetically he would, because if I'm writing that story and that character's inconsequential, I'm not going to spend the time to...
Nor should you.
Yeah. Okay, so then what are you arguing with me about?
I'm just arguing because you're saying he wouldn't have them, and he would. It's just you're not going to develop them.
He wouldn't have them. in the existential argument, in that he is a character within a fictional universe, the fact that he is a person means those things should hypothetically exist. That I'll agree with.
And that's all I'm saying is that, and that's
a
all characters
stupid
have
thing
them.
to say.
But the point is, all characters have these things. These aren't things about a hero.
If you haven't created them, they don't have them. How can you argue that with me?
The character has them. You just haven't developed them.
Moving on.
But the point is, all characters have those, irregardless if they've been developed. Those are the things that help make characters characters.
If the creator has not given them to them, then they don't have them yet. They have not received them. They have not displayed them. They don't exist.
Oh, aren't we a power freak over here? If I have not created them, they do not exist.
If I am the world builder, if I haven't built it, it doesn't exist.
And if I close my eyes right now, you will be destroyed. So pray I don't do that, sir.
All right. I pray to Jeff Ingram not to close your eyes so that I cease to exist again.
Don't dodge me, boy.
Yes, sir.
What we have here is failure to communicate.
Get your dirt out of my hole. So, we've completed the list and just stating what's up here on the board. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything that we're thinking about in the moment that you want to add to this, or do you want to just keep exploring purpose and motivation? I think that we should explore purpose and motivation more. Those
are the two ones I'm thinking. Do we really need to recap anything for type of hero? I don't think so, really.
If we come up with one in the conversation, make a mental note or signal me and we'll add something to it. Yeah. So motivation, I think, is where you're going to start. If you're going to create your hero, you need to know why he's a hero. Like, why is he a hero? Why does he want, or why does he not want to be a hero?
Almost definitely. I think one of the key things with the motivation too is, depending on the type of style of stories you want to tell, it's even more important, because why would you consider the character from All Quiet on the Western Front a hero outside of he's the main character?
Is that the one,
the World War I German,
where they make the mock battle?
Oh, no. This is a trench warfare World War I.
I know. There's. You're talking about the movie. There's a book for that too, isn't there?
I was talking about the book, but yeah, there's a movie. I don't think I've seen the movie.
No, the movie I am thinking is On a Midnight Clear, but I think it might be based off of that book. So tell me about that book a little bit.
I mean, essentially, it's really an anti-war story, but to pull it off in the era, because it was designed, I believe, for England. They set it a German character to be a guy questioning what's going on. Why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm. And so he's questioning motivation.
He's questioning, the motivation of the side he's on.
Yeah.
And really the whole war in general. And, because, in a way, wars are really crappy for the guys who end up fighting them. Mm-hmm. They might work out for the rulers at the end of the wars. And oftentimes they don't even do that. But for the guys fighting them, there's really no good reason outside of patriotism and nationalism. And to me, this book was kind of taking shots at those things. But essentially, it's following him through his side from the Germans through the Western Front. And, not much more of it's really important than that. But the idea is, his motivations, it's a very realistic book in the sense of where it's coming from to where this guy is questioning the whole way what his motivations are, and he's changing. And we're at the beginning of a story, especially in those times, and even today, like if you come out of basic training, you are hoorah, Army, go USA.
You're so pumped up.
And you will never question that until you hit something that will make you question that. And I would think, especially World War I to me is a horrific kind of warfare. I think all kinds are probably horrific, but you're under constant fight, bullets are flying almost all of the time. At least in my mind, I wasn't there, I guess. But,
but you've done a lot of reading on it.
It's a relatively horrible existence. You live in a hole in the ground. It rains. You get flooded. Yay.
You're living in a mud pit.
It's so bad. Even when I was in the service, one of the things they taught us to worry about as a soldier was trench foot, which is what they still call it, when essentially the inside of your shoes get wet. They don't dry out. it will actually malform your feet and cause disease to set in. And it's a really bad thing to have. I mean, you might not lose your foot for it, but you don't want to get trench foot. So, you'll see soldiers stop, and you probably see this if you've watched a World War II movie with a squad of infantry where they're stopping. They're pulling off their boots. They're hanging their socks
and changing their socks out. Yeah.
And I know in Vietnam, they actually came up with a type of boots called jungle boots, which I don't know if they existed before that, which have a mesh along the sides, which will allow if your foot gets wet, which is very likely in a jungle. Or like when I was in Fort Stewart, which is a swamp, same thing.
Well, wasn't it you who were telling me that you would not wear socks in your...
I did not wear socks.
Yeah.
No. And essentially that came for me from basic. And this is a quick side note, so I'll cover it really quickly. But blisters are caused by friction. And so when you have a sock moving in one direction and the boot moving in a different direction, that's what causes a blister. And I had really bad blisters in basic. And my drill sergeant told me, he's like, it's the socks. Your socks just don't stay on your feet. Take them off. And so I took them off.
And these are the issue socks.
Yes.
And he's saying, like,
yeah, it's just because of whatever my feet, they wouldn't sit straight.
So not everybody was dealing with it for some reason.
That, but for me, when I took off my socks, I mean, it kind of sucked for a little bit, but you build up really hardcore calluses on your feet. And, but I never got another blister.
Nice.
So
I would call your blistered feet a quirk.
Yes, that would be a quirk.
So motivation is what we were talking about. And how did we get into trench foot?
Because we're talking about trench warfare.
No, I know that, but like, what was the motivation? Oh, you were talking about on the Western Front.
Yeah, and how he's, the entire time he's questioning the motivation of the war, he's questioning his motivation. And if you're going to have a realistic kind of character interactions in your made up story, one of the things, that will happen, especially extreme trauma or extreme circumstances, will typically get people to question their motivations, question their purpose for doing things.
So I'm adding to the board here, big action. And this goes along with purpose. So one of the things that's going to be big about a hero is that they are a hero and tied into the story. We're paying attention to them because there is a big action, whether it be an actual physical action or a big,
You mean surrounding them?
Yeah, they're involved in something large. That's what makes. Yeah. That's one of the
usually something either just at the edge of or larger than life.
Yes. The reason I wrote it down and I want to mention it tied to motivation is the hero has thought about it. And as the writer or as the developer, like, you need to know why or what they've thought about. Yeah. If they're involved in something really large, like if I was involved in something really, really large, I wouldn't just be involved in it. I would pick a side. I'd have thought about it. So that lends itself back into motivation.
Well,
so
I think
think about why they're in there. We might be
missing here too, or maybe it's kind of tied in with big action, is one of the things that typically makes a hero is that the character you're talking about will take actions that you could not guarantee you would do yourself in that circumstance. You might hope you would, like Audie Murphy from my division, the 3rd Infantry Division. He was awarded 2 Medals of Honor in World War II.
Wow.
And lived. I mean, getting one of those and living is rare. He got 2.
Yeah, a lot of times that medal is awarded post-mortem.
Yeah, because you almost always die in those scenarios. The types of scenarios that are that kind of bravery. Like he called artillery on his own position when they were being overrun by German tanks. And usually the other one from back then was charging a machine gun bunker and taking everyone out yourself.
So is he an immortal? Is he a Highlander?
No, he ended up becoming an alcoholic and dying.
Oh,
but he was a movie actor and he wrote a song which I will not sing. I refuse to sing.
What's the song?
It is the 3rd Infantry Division song.
Oh, it's like a military song.
Yeah,
it's not like a pop song or like he didn't become a musician.
He was an actor / singer. He starred in the movie about Audie Murphy.
You worked with that guy? I know of that guy.
I didn't work with him. He was from World War II.
But you just made it sound like
Oh, trust me, he's had a huge impact on the 3rd Infantry Division.
No, I know who you're talking about. Look, the name didn't click, but I remember reading a big article about him that talked about the stuff that he did. He's the one that he was a very little guy, right?
Yeah.
And he had a difficulty joining the military. He was too young. He was trying to sign up before he was
probably cheated to get
He
in.
did.
Yeah.
He did. He cheated on his age. So he actually joined a little younger than he was supposed to, and he was physically smaller, and they didn't want to let him in.
Yep.
Like, he tried joining a number of times till he was finally able to join. I do know this guy's story. I've read about
the biggest thing I know about him would be
So,
as a soldier in the motor pool, having someone, like a first sergeant walk past you as there's like this vehicle of female soldiers and go, "Soldier, what is the 3rd verse of the Marine Division song?" And you'd have to sing it. And if you didn't get the words right, you'd have to do push-ups. It was a horrible experience. Thank you, Audie Murphy.
Thank you. Well, that's not Audie's fault. That's your drill sergeant's fault. Because even if he got that right, he'd get you on something else. That's what drill sergeants are for.
No, that's post-drill sergeant.
Oh.
That was the 3rd Infantry Division song, and you had to get it right because you had to show the spree. But the idea is, he performed actions.
And again, motivation.
Because of his motivation.
Right.
And his deep, deep belief, and purpose, he performed actions that most people, even people of courage, would not do.
There's a great article on Cracked. I'm trying to remember the name of it. You should probably try to look it up. But it was basically a list of big military, and actually, it's all real. It's all real stuff that happened. Audie Murphy was on that list. That's one.
Sergeant York's another one that usually makes that list.
He's one of the guys that was on the list. There's another story that I've read about Audie Murphy, but on that list it was basically superhuman things that had occurred in mostly military scenarios that people had survived and done. Yeah. It basically was like stuff that they had done that made Rambo look like a wimp. There was a guy in India. There was a military in India. I'm not sure what the military was, so I'm not going to try to name it because I don't know. And the service award is only given to people that perform things that are literally deemed impossible.
Yeah.
This guy scaled the side of a cliff like they were ordered to because they were pinned down by this machine gun, pit, bunker, whatever you want to call it. And there were 2 of them on opposing cliff sides. And they were basically like, look, we have to take this out because it was a movement thing. Like they couldn't get troops or whatever vehicles from point A to point B because of these turrets.
Yep.
So they had to, or not turrets, but like a machine gun bed or whatever. So they had to. The only way to approach them was from a sheer cliff. So they said, all right, who's willing to do it? And they got 10, 15 guys that said, we'll do it. Nobody else made it. He went all the way up. He was getting fired upon by the other turret, other machine gun setup. Yeah. Grenades. The whole way he is shooting his gun, shooting a machine gun, and throwing his own grenades.
Yep.
He got shot 13 times and survived. He lived. And he got up the cliff, took out the one, and then used the one to take out the other.
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Which just one of my things here where we talk about heroes, to me, this is a term we overuse today.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
For me, it has to be the actions they're performing along the way are things that you could not reasonably know that you could do unless you were in that circumstance and probably would not. And
I want to be very clear. I mean, I've mentioned it on other shows, but Jeff is a veteran. Or actually, is that the right word for?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I don't want to take anything away from a veteran or a soldier, but there's a difference between a veteran, a soldier, and a hero.
Yes.
Absolute huge props to all veterans and all soldiers.
The term we use in the Army is valor.
Valor.
You perform valor on the battlefield. That's what makes a hero in the Army. And I don't think all veterans are heroes. I don't consider myself a hero, although I am really attractive.
It is. It's very true. It's sometimes unsettling to sit across from him because it's.
That's why I don't do video, because it would be
you guys couldn't handle it. It wouldn't be fair to other podcasters and video bloggers. So we have to keep you under wraps. It's just you are just for
the safety of the world.
You are just for your wife. The world couldn't handle it.
Yeah, but But, you know,
this man could not be William Wallace, for I am prettier than he.
that's right. And that's not to say some of the actions they do, like police officers, firefighters maybe more so often are heroes, I think. Because if you're running into an actual fire to save people, that's pretty impressive.
Here's what I want to say. If you are willing to serve, if you're in the military, that alone is great. You are willing to do a job a lot of people won't do.
You're and a huge cut towards hero.
You've already made a really large leap towards hero. And most of the time, I know not all of the jobs in the military, but I would say a great deal of them mean that you may be put in a scenario where you can or would be a hero. And by that, I mean you're risking your life for the life of another. That's how I define a hero. Yeah. Like if you have to risk your life or limb to save another person, like you don't have to do it, but if you do it willingly or reluctantly, if you do it, I'd say that's a hero. So
I'd agree with that. And heroes can be cowards.
But we're breaking into real life hero, not fictional hero. Let's get back to fictional hero.
But I mean,
because there's a difference.
Well, yes, but the idea is there's certain kinds of traits you can draw from real heroes.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing I wanted to get to, is this idea that you're performing these actions that people could not reasonably say unless they were in the scenario, and probably would not do. But beyond that, I mean, is there anything else that we really need to say that you think that we're missing here?
Well, I think that we should talk a little bit more about purpose. And again, let's bring it back to world builder, fictional, development. We're talking about motivation a lot.
A good chance to know their hero is that you've actually written down a purpose for them.
Yeah, I mean, let's make it really, really. Let's use a rudimentary story example. You've got a knight and you've got a princess being held by the dragon. So his motivation is he wants to save her. His purpose is he's got to kill the dragon. So everyone needs the dragon to die. So there's a purpose there.
Yeah.
If there was no dragon,
there's something he has to achieve to fulfill what he's motivated to do.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, if a hero has nothing to do.
It's the obstacle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a boring story.
Yeah. Exactly. If the hero's got nothing to do, then there's,
Then you end up with a horrible thing like the Gallivant musical thing.
What are you talking about?
There was a musical thing on CBS or one of those networks I thought was pretty bad. It had moments. It was like this.
No idea what you're talking
ancient, about. like English hero, but it was a musical.
Okay. Was it just based off of a real guy or just a story?
It's just a story that was made up. It was meant to be a comedy. It had moments, but overall it was pretty weak because it was weak story.
Do we also, I don't think this necessarily has to be included, but we should, I would feel we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that generally there should be I'm not going to say a villain to the hero, i.e. a Joker to the Batman, but there should be an opposition.
Well, but you're interfering with your own purpose statement because that could be the purpose.
It could be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is.
Yeah, but there doesn't need to be a villain in a story.
Which is why I was saying it could be a force as opposed to simply a villain.
But once again, I think you're going back to your purpose in a different roundabout way.
All right, fair enough. Yeah. I'm just trying to give them stuff to think about.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, not that I think anyone listening to the show is not thinking about this stuff. I'm sure they are.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I know it's on the list. I want to make sure it gets explored,
But, I think that's actually a good segue into our world building task for the day, which is to actually tweet us and taunt us about all of the stuff we missed, because this whole episode ended up being not exactly what we had planned from the beginning.
We actually sat down to build a hero. We ended up eating so much time.
Brainstorming that's usually done on air. So taunt us and give us the things that we've missed.
Yeah. And all right, so that's the world builder's task to engage with us, basically. Yeah, engage with us. That'd be great.
And
what's the real world task of the day?
The real world task for the day is read a nonfiction book.
I love nonfiction books.
Yeah, and I think most people do. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I think a lot of times people who are into love genre fantasy,
and just stick with it. Yeah.
It's the opposite problem that people who are entrepreneurs have, which they always read books to improve themselves in business and forget to read fiction.
Yeah,
if you love fiction and you're immersed in it, that's great. Read some nonfiction book to work on some part of your character that will make you better.
And when you're going to go pick out your nonfiction book, go to www.garduel.com/Amazon. It'll take you straight to Amazon. Doesn't change the price, but it helps out the show.
And you can find lots of books there, I hear.
That's true. I actually recently bought, and I'm reading Ready Player One, which is a fiction, but I bought it off of Amazon through Garduel. Excellent. I also bought Lost Cities, which is a card game. I don't know if you played Lost Cities. No, it's good stuff. I'm going to beat you to the tease. Oh. And I'm going to say that the tease for next show is we've laid a really great foundation for the hero. We're actually going to build him next episode.
Yes. And as always, make sure to go to garduel.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at garduel.com to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike, while the myth rolls high.